I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Andrew Price.
Welcome to Deep Cuts, the podcast where we pick a topic and walk you through the ins, the outs, and the nitty-gritty so that you can appear like an interesting and idiosyncratic person at your next forced social function. Today's topic is...
the Dolphin House.
What is the Dolphin House? Well, it's the story of a flooded home, a scientist's dream, and a dolphin named Peter who showed us all how important connection and contact can really be.
Act 1. The next best thing to aliens. It starts like all good experiments do, with ambition. A dream. A belief in the impossible. It's the 1960s, a time when science is stretching its fingers into every corner of the unknown. We're going to the moon. We're unlocking the mysteries of the mind. And if John C. Lilly has his way, we're about to have a conversation with dolphins. The logic is simple. If humans want to communicate with extraterrestrials one day, surely we should find a way to be able to talk to this next most intelligent being on our own planet, dolphins. That is the foundation of the Dolphin House experiment, a NASA-funded, scientifically ambitious, and ethically unhinged project designed to break the barriers of interspecies communications. If this sounds like the start of a mad scientist journal, that's because it essentially is. The results were as strange as the premise, spiraling into obsession, boundary breaking, and at its most bizarre, an unsettling relationship between one woman and one dolphin. But to understand the sheer strangeness of this experiment, we have to understand its architect, John C. Lilly. A neuroscientist, psychoanalyst, and inventor, Lilly was a man who saw no boundary as unbreakable. His previous work had already earned him a reputation for eccentricity. He was one of the first scientists to explore sensory deprivation tanks, believing they could unlock hidden areas of consciousness. He was fascinated by the untapped potential of the human mind and heavily endorsed LSD and yoga as ways to expand humanity's horizons and, by extension, the minds of other intelligent creatures. Dave, I don't want to cross over into defamation or libel territory, but considering that this guy was like one of the early adopters of sensory deprivation tanks and using psychedelic drugs. Do you think that Joe Rogan jerks off dolphins?
I will say young Joe Rogan looks like someone who jerks off dolphins.
Oh, 100%. That dude on news radio jerks off dolphins. This guy looks like...
Do you think the reason why Joe Rogan did a bunch of steroids and got into MMA and just punched his feelings out is because he
got broken up with by a dolphin?
Yeah, yeah.
A dolphin dumped him?
Yeah. He looked in the mirror one morning and was like, "Fuck, I can't believe my dolphin bride left me."
Oh, 100%. 100%. It's a tale as old as time. These guys out there, the manosphere guys, they had their heart broken by one girl and it just changed the trajectory of their life. For Joe Rogan, it was flipperette.
Here's my question. The whole running conceit of this is a dolphin gets jerked off. Is it a different... Yeah, it is. That's what we're going to talk about. But is it different if a dolphin gets finger banged? Is it different? Does that change things?
You mean morally? Or what do you mean different?
I don't know. I just wanted to say the phrase dolphin got finger banged. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Obviously,
it's an animal. It can't consent, therefore it's not chill.
Yeah, it can't. I mean, dolphins, I guess, are technically highly intelligent and maybe have the equivalent intelligence of an adult human, but yeah, they can't talk, at least not to us. So
here's my next question. We
shouldn't be jerking or banging or any of that stuff.
Yeah. Here's my next question. I'm vaguely aware of this, just kind of from vaguely the internet. Is this a story that you knew about previous to us deciding to cover it?
Yeah. I mean, it's a story that I've heard about randomly. It's similar to some of the other episodes we've done where it's a story that's I've always known as like a clickbait thing that you would read about on any number of like listicle website that I've even worked at or, just consumed passively by being on social media. And then it's one that I've kind of had, like I've mentioned this to you multiple times over the course of years. It's an episode that's like been in the back pocket of like someday we should do this, but for whatever reason, I don't know whether it was like lack of thinking it was good enough to be an episode, or maybe I didn't think there was enough details to it or something like that. We just never did it. And then I kind of found out a little bit more information because I just vaguely knew about it. I was like, yeah, there was like a thing where somebody did an experiment and like a woman had like a sexual relationship with a dolphin. That's like obviously crazy, but is it enough for an episode? And then I learned more about it and I was like, oh, there's actually this whole other thing where it was part of this bigger experiment that in and of itself was also very strange, even if there wasn't a dolphin jerking off element to it. So then, it kind of pushed it over the limit.
Well, you know what they say, come for the long-term committed dolphin relationship, stay for the dolphin getting jerked off.
Yeah. I'm actually, we're really like, we're jumping right to dolphin gets jerked off in the beginning of this, which like people who are listening to this, like, I don't think they realize that that's what they were getting into. I think they were like, oh, there was like an episode about like a weird dolphin thing. And we're just, we're just like, cutting
is this like
right.
Hype House, but with dolphins?
We're cutting right to a lady jerked off a dolphin. I think this is going to give a lot of people whiplash, but I don't know. Maybe
Can you imagine being in your car with your kids and it's like, hey guys, the new episode of Deep Cut. Oh, dolphin jerking off. Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that wouldn't be the first bad review we got of people being like, I listen to my podcast out loud in the car with my kids and I can't listen to yours because you talk about jerking off dolphins too much.
Yeah. Well, you win some, you lose some.
Indeed. This idea of communicating with dolphins is a fascinating idea. The way our mind could be a Rubik's Cube that's just one great trip or solid stretch away from breaking the constructs put upon us by society. Norms are called such because they are exactly that, normal. But what if the key to discovering the abnormal was being abnormal yourself? That ideology, plus a love for dolphins, led Lily to the Virgin Isles. To Lily, dolphins were not just animals. They were beings of immense cognitive ability, perhaps even possessing a form of intelligence we had yet to comprehend. We don't actually have one in here, but I'm pulling up a picture of John C. Lilly. We got to look at John C. Lilly.
John C.
Here we go. Is this really this guy?
I'm gonna guess he looks like William H. Macy. No, John C. Reilly. I'm gonna say John C. Reilly.
You think he looked like John C. Reilly because his name is John C. Lilly?
Yes, that is why.
He looks more like John Hurt.
Yeah, he does look like John Hurt.
I mean, this is him older. This is more like present day. This is more along the lines of him when he was, hosting dolphin orgies.
Dude, you know who he is? He's John Hurt in Hellboy. He's Professor Broom.
Oh yeah. He does look like Professor. That's funny because I was talking about this picture where he looks like old John Hurt, but then this young picture of him, he does look like Professor Broom, like the younger version of him from the opening 10 minutes of Hellboy.
Yeah.
When he finds Hellboy, that he looks just like that dude. Which I can't remember if that was that like an aged down John Hurt?
No.
I
recently just rewatched both Hellboy movies, and no, it is not. It is a separate actor who's just a young English actor who is great in the role. And it's so refreshing when you're watching the movie because it's so practical and tactile, and it's so nice to just have another actor playing a younger version of a person, of the character, as
rather
opposed
than
to like a weird CG homunculus thing.
Yeah, it's one of those things that we've completely moved away from because everybody has become obsessed with the technology aspect of it, of like we have the ability to age down an actor with visual effects. So like anytime that there's ever going to be a young actor in a thing, it's a challenge to like outdo the last time that somebody did aging down of an actor. But at the end of the day, it's like just put a younger actor as the younger person. Like That's all you need to do. It's better for the story. It's not distracting, and it doesn't turn the whole thing into basically a stunt.
Yeah, totally.
But at any rate, young John C. Reilly would have been a great younger John Hurt in Hellboy if he had been this young at the time of that movie being made.
John C. Reilly looks like the type of guy who has definitely jerked off and then at least tasted a little bit of his own cum, just to be like, what's the vibe here?
Oh my God, we got Wavy Davy coming in hot. There's also like
look at this guy. Look at this guy. Yeah. He's wearing a coonskin cap. That man has eaten his own cum. He has.
This is kind of like the many faces of John C. Reilly. Usually we get a picture of a person, and they kind of have a similar look. But like John C. Reilly had some different looks. He goes from like in his younger days looking like a dapper man about town. He's got this older John Hurt look, and then he's also like dressed like a turn of the century explorer for some reason in this picture.
Yeah, he's got like a chin goatee, gray hair, and a literal coonskin cap, like a Davy Crockett coonskin cap on.
Yeah, I would not think these were the same guys if it wasn't indicated that they were.
Do you remember the episode we did? Do you remember the episode we did about the Japanese guy who was a cannibal who they tricked that woman into filming a porn with him?
Yeah, Isai Sagawa.
Yes, Isai Sagawa. And you know how like the last act of his life, he like transitions away from cannibalism, and he's really obsessed with like this specific teen idol, and he's like really just obsessed with her.
Yeah.
I think each one of those periods of John C. Reilly is a different sexual era. Like when he's the Professor Broom, he's into dolphins. When he's the Davy Crockett, he's into snowballing. When he's the like old man, he's into like foot stuff. I don't know, whatever. But like,
yeah, he calmed down in his old age. He was like, let's move away from the dolphins. I'm into foot stuff now.
Yeah, I'm just into those little toes, those little twinkled toes. Let me see those twinkled toes,
Yeah, I mean, my other question is like, did Sequest get that from this story?
Yeah, well, there was kind of a thing like is it Neuromancer that Johnny Mnemonic is an adaptation of, or Mona Lisa Overdrive, which is the novel that's an adaptation of. There's like a talking, psychically empowered dolphin in that too.
Yeah, and there's also an episode of Voyager, I'm pretty sure. Is it Voyager? What is it? There's an episode where somebody gets taken into a ship that's a bunch of like the universe's smartest beings, and they want them to join them and like traverse the universe, like solving the universe's problems by being geniuses. And one of the creatures in the ship is a dolphin that is like in a tank and speaks through like a telekinetic or
Yeah, I think that's Voyager. If it's not Voyager, I've definitely seen that. But now I'm also thinking of, I mean, that's literally this, basically, other than it's the smartest beings from a bunch of alien races, that's also the idea for, is it Einstein? Is that the dolphin's name in Sequest? Is it Einstein? Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen Sequest.
Yeah, I mean, all I remember about it is Roy Scheider. He's in that. Is that who's like? All I remember about it is Roy Scheider, Jonathan Brandis, R.I.P., and a fucking dolphin. That's all I remember about that show.
Yeah, I remember it's like, I don't remember if it's the first season that's really dark and then it gets really kid friendly, or it was kid friendly and then they made it really dark for the second season. But I remember there's like a big shift that happens in the show where it just becomes this completely other thing. And I remember trying to explain it to kids at the time, being like, no, it's fucking crazy, man. Like, blah, 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 blah.
Well, I mean, I'm fine with like a darker tone, but I really kind of thought they went over the line in the season 2 episode whenever Jonathan Brandis jerked off the dolphin.
Touche. All right, let's get back to it.
His obsession with dolphin communication was not born in isolation. At the time, the space race was in full swing. NASA, desperate to stay ahead of the Soviets, was investing in unconventional research that might have any possible application to space travel and extraterrestrial contact. Lilly sold them on the idea that if we ever encountered intelligent alien life, we needed to develop a system for understanding and communicating with non-human intelligences first. What better test subjects than dolphins, creatures known for their complex vocalizations and problem-solving abilities? It was an idea that, on paper, had kind of a deranged logic to it. Lilly believed that language was a thin film. We got a video of John C. Lilly.
I think it would be good to start with your famous maxim about what is true in the province of the mind.
Oh, and this this interview that we're watching now is the interview of that. This is where that photo came from of him dressed like Davy Crockett, and he's
this is so unhinged.
He's dressed like a frontiersman, but also he has like one single Michael Jackson glove.
This is so fucking unhinged. This is so unhinged.
In the province of the mind, what one believes to be true either is true or becomes
Does he have earrings?
Yeah. He's got like
dude, this guy was a swinger.
He's got ring earrings like Dalsim from Street Fighter 2 or like the genie or whatever.
And experientially, when so far,
excuse me, I believe they call those the Michael Jordan.
Oh yes, of course.
Transcended. In the province of the mind, there are no limits. However, in the province of the body, there are definite limits not to be transcended.
You've probably devoted...
Well, now we know why this guy tries to fuck dolphins, because he's the least exciting human ever.
You know, what really were the...
Yeah, you expect, from what he looks like, you expect him to be like a fucking, like a Timothy Leary type, or even like a Hunter S. Thompson too, but William S. Burroughs type. But then he's just like he sounds like he sounds like he looks. He sounds like a pilgrim from the 1700s.
This motherfucker is Oregon trailing out here.
Yeah.
Taking on the belief systems of those realities and then coming.
But also, like, we're kind of misleading the listener by saying he looks like Davy Crockett or a frontiersman or whatever, because like he's wearing a coonskin cap, and his from the neck up, he looks like Davy Crockett because his face, he looks like a frontiersman from the late 1800s, and he's wearing a coonskin cap. But then he's also wearing like a tracksuit, like a brown, like I think leather or suede tracksuit.
Like this guy, you know how like after he left Area 51, Bob Lazar, noted Area 51 whistleblower, may or may not have been running a prostitution ring, and maybe it was the government setting that up to discredit him, and maybe it was him making extremely poor life decisions. That's what this tracksuit is giving. This tracksuit is giving I run a brothel.
Yes. Oh, I mean, this dude is a pimp 100%. The only question is how many of his what do you call like his employees? I don't know.
There's a pretty standard word for it.
Well, I was wondering, because you know how like pimps, they're called, like prostitutes will call them their Johns. I was wondering if there was an equivalent term that. Oh yeah, I guess they call them hoes. Yeah, I didn't want to say that. I was wondering if there was a more politically correct term, but I guess that is ridiculous to say considering what it is.
After I'm just like spewing vile garbage about jerking off dolphins, and you're like, but what they're employees?
It's just like a pimp who's just like, excuse me, hose is a very regressive term. They are called women under my employ. But yeah, the only question is how many of those are dolphins?
Yeah.
Back to the basic working reality and challenging those beliefs, integrating those beliefs with your own. In your writings, you've explored almost every state of consciousness I could imagine, the various mystical levels of Satori.
You can tell that this guy is like, he's very fascinated with this guy's writings, but he just was not expecting him to come in looking like an 1800s pimp.
Yeah. He's asking about like, how do you think, and like, what are your doctorates? But inside his head, he's like, do I bring up the hat? Do I not bring up the hat? Should I ask where he got it? Should I compliment it?
It's impossible, because there are infinities within the mind.
I think that's the beauty of your work is that you keep moving further and further out. In the center of the cyclone, you describe.
Dude, you got to give it up for John C. Lilly's cheekbones, though, man. Those things are real.
Oh, yeah, he's got those Abraham Lincoln cheekbones.
And you talked about
he really does.
I found most fascinating, what you call +3, Mega Satori.
But anyway, this guy, he's obviously exactly what he is. This is the exact guy who created a fucking Dolphin House and facilitated some dolphin strange.
For real.
Again, this is a fascinating idea. We depend on language so much, we tie it to our reality in a roundabout way, oftentimes forgetting so much of the world's population never engages in verbal language. Yet they still remain connected and in touch with one another. Even without the constructed and accepted syllables of words or sentences, humanity finds a way to be with one another. Aliens, though? Who knows? So with NASA's blessing and money, Lilly set out to build his experiment. He wasn't interested in just studying dolphins in captivity. He wanted full immersion. He envisioned a living space where humans and dolphins coexisted in total intimacy, where communication would become second nature through sheer proximity. And so he set his sights on a secluded location in the Caribbean where he could create an environment unlike anything seen before. A flooded house where humans and dolphins would live together 24/7 with the goal of teaching them to speak English. The experiment, from its inception, was audacious. But what it became, what it devolved into, was something no one could have predicted. And at the center of it all was a young researcher named Margaret Lovett, who would form a bond with a dolphin that crossed every conceivable line. Yeah, so not to get too political in this episode about dolphin handies, but there's been some new stories in the news recently about some sweeping cuts to government programs and funding. A lot of it very bad. People, teams researching cures for cancer being unceremoniously cut. Mutual aid funding being cut from third world countries. People here losing access to health programs and so on and so forth. One aspect of it, though, which I actually think is kind of a part of the propaganda, is when they talk about these cuts and all of this so-called, spending unnecessary spending that they're cutting to save, the American taxpayer money. One thing that they focus on is highlighting these like goofy, zany things like, oh, we were spending money on fucking people, trying to see if snakes could be tires for cars. And, they just made the snake bite its tail and then they attached it to a car and they just saw if it could drive. And they go up and they talk about these stories to try to make it seem like the government is like funding a bunch of really absurd shit we're just wasting our money on. And that's obviously like they're doing that on purpose to obfuscate the fact that they're gutting a lot of really important things. But I'm gonna be honest. I think that the weird shit should be funded too. Like I think there is some goofy shit in the history of the government funding weird little programs. Some of it not so great. MK Ultra, injecting gorillas with LSD, not good. Unknowingly drugging men and having them do weird and things, torturing them, all these things, not good. But maybe we could figure out how to make dolphins speak English. Like I'm willing to see that out.
I mean, what do we have to learn from dolphins, really? And I feel like the answer is probably, I think the key to existence would be knowing which one of the Marvel Cinematic Universe entries is a dolphin's favorite. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe that would become the thing. Like we could just consult with dolphins and whatever. Like we realized that for some reason the Venn diagram of like human and dolphin taste. Like if a dolphin and a human both like something, that means that it's an absolute hit. And then we could just the future of the box office would be revolutionized because the studios would no longer have to, take, wild risks or rely on, regurgitated, reboots and sequels and all this stuff. They would just have like a council of dolphins and they'd just be like, which one of these Fast and the Furious movies would you watch? And then that's the one that they go with. And then it makes $3 billion at the box office every single time.
Which one of these Fast and Furious cast members would you rather be finger banged by? And then they all just pick Paul Walker, and Universal's like, well, fuck.
Get out that deep fake computer. Picture a sun-drenched island in the Caribbean. St. Thomas, U.S. Virgin Islands, 1963. It's idyllic, right? Sun-kissed trees and beaches that cradle your feet while you walk to the beat of a singing wave line. But Lily had set up shop in an abandoned building perched over the water, its insides gutted and reimagined into something straight out of science fiction. Rooms flooded with knee-deep saltwater, walkways just above the surface so humans could live side by side with dolphins in an artificial world of half water, half air. This is the Dolphin House. The house is part laboratory, part home, and part bizarre social experiment. The walls are white, sterile, meant for observation. The water sloshes constantly, damp and invasive, creeping into every corner. The scientists live here. The dolphins live here. There is no escape, no clear line between work and life. The air is thick with the smell of salt and fish. The ceaseless noise of water moving against walls, the occasional high-pitched whistle of a dolphin. And we have a picture here of sort of an aerial view of what this dolphin house looked like.
It's interesting. It's interesting because it looks kind of like how you'd expect it to look, which is, what if Southern California, but make it SeaWorld? Southern California Adobe stucco house, but make it SeaWorld. But also I'm curious what the more domesticated human parts of it looked like, because this is obviously where the dolphins were, but like, where's the kitchen? Like, how does that stuff work? Are they that integrated that they're like fucking, making their breakfast omelets and there's just like a dolphin swimming 6 feet away, or is there a little bit of separation there?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. What I was gonna say, it kind of feeds into my joke, but if you see more photos or footage of it, essentially like the entire house, like sort of like the main conveyance of the house is all submerged in like knee deep or maybe thigh deep water. So like getting around the entire house, you're going through this water where you're just in the water with dolphins. So, you're in this cohabitation situation where you just walk around and you're just wading through water and there's just dolphins hanging out with you. But then all of the things where there needs to be something that is like dry or, not submerged in water, like you said, like a kitchen, or like, places where they actually sleep, they're like elevated onto little platforms. So there's like platforms and then stuff is like on top of it. And then you kind of like crawl out of the water like you're getting out of a swimming pool to go to these designated places where they kind of put things that have to be dry and are sort of more for like for the human only consumption. And I was going to say that the Dolphin House reminds me of like that episode of Seinfeld where Kramer gets obsessed with levels.
Oh yeah, levels, Jerry. Levels.
But if it was vaporwave, it's like vaporwave levels.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's actually a really good, because it kind of has the same level of unhinged too, like the episode where he like gets the Merv Griffin show.
Yeah, he has the set and he just starts having talk shows in his apartment that aren't filmed or anything like that. Like, yeah, Kramer would absolutely just transform his apartment into a dolphin habitat.
Yeah, definitely.
In fact, I'll give a special shout out to the first listener who makes that meme. You know, that meme that kind of blew up like late last year, where it's Jerry at Kramer's door, and he's like, "What's going on in there, Kramer?" And then he says like something, and you replace it with whatever. Like, there was like a Hellraiser one where he's like, it's, carnal delights beyond the imagination or whatever. And then behind him through his doorway, you could just see like into the Hellraiser dimension or whatever. The first listener who does that meme, but then they have like the Dolphin House inside of the door, and then Kramer's like, says something like, "Oh, a sanctuary where humans and dolphins coexist." I'll give you a special shout out on the show. We'll look at your meme and talk about it, because I just want to see that.
It's a mini version of the Spapa, Spitza, Spizza, Spizza, Mimaritza.
What the fuck, Dave? You've been out of the game too long. It's the pizza, paparizza, Mimaritza, Celebrizza.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
God damn. You gotta get back into it, baby.
I know, dude. I gotta fucking rev up, dude. I gotta fucking get my shit together.
The logistics of living in a semi-submerged house were strange. Papers had to be kept in high, dry places. Electrical equipment had to be waterproofed or carefully positioned to avoid short-circuiting. Clothes were perpetually damp. Any food brought into the house had to be carefully stored to avoid water contamination. Scientists often found themselves eating with one hand while absent-mindedly brushing away splashes with the other. Over time, the distinction between land and sea, between human and dolphin, blurred. The inhabitants of Dolphin House became something in between, living in a world not entirely suited for either species. How would you feel about living in a fucking dolphin house?
Bro, you know the answer to this question. You know I would fucking hate this. You fucking kidding me?
Sounds awful to me. I mean, every aspect of it. I mean, I would hate to be just like constantly wet. Like that doesn't sound fun. I mean, I'm sure there's maybe these scientists are just really into like hanging out in the water or whatever. But like, I just would not want to be constantly wet. Either just wading through knee-deep water or just kind of damp at all times. That sounds horrible. And also, dolphins are known to just indiscriminately rape people.
Is that really a thing? They like rape people?
Yeah, because they rape each other, and then like if you're in the water, like they'll just rape you.
Maybe the big twist of this episode is I'm like, wow, it's so immoral that they're like finger banging these fucking dolphins, and then the twist ending is like, wow, I feel really bad for all these people. They got raped by these dolphins.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, we're foreshadowing or spoiler alert, whatever you want to call it, but like, I don't think any rapes happened. But as we're gonna kind of get into, the sexual relationship thing that transpires is kind of like as a result of the dolphin kind of pushing her into it, which at the end of the day, I'm not saying like, she was asking for it, the dolphin made her do it. Like, absolutely not. Like, number one, this lady should not have jerked off this dolphin. And number two, like, regardless of what dolphins do or whether they rape people or whatever, like, she still actively made the decision to do this. But that all being said, as we're kind of get into, like, there was some level of the dolphin kind of being like, just touch it.
Can you imagine the dolphin doing that like lip biting fuckboy face, like?
That's kind of what the dolphin did. That's kind of literally what the dolphin did. We'll talk about it more later. The experiment required more than just physical adaptation. It demanded a psychological shift. Living in such close quarters with dolphins meant that human behaviors had to be modified. Communication with the dolphin was not limited to training session. It was constant, a persistent dialogue of whistles, clicks, and exaggerated speech. The researchers spoke aloud to the dolphins as though they were children, narrating every action in the hope that some understanding might develop. Also, we didn't really talk about this, but like, what an insane, ridiculous idea that they thought that they could make dolphins speak English. Like, that's fucking crazy. And like, from my joking aside about like government funding weird shit or whatever, like, I guess from the government's perspective, they would fund a lot of weird shit because they were just like, I don't know, maybe something will come of this crazy shit. Like, maybe if we do send a bunch of guys out to the desert, like, they'll figure out how to do Jedi mind tricks or whatever. Like, fuck it. Like, just give them some money and just see. Like, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. everything we throw $1 million at is a lottery card. But this is absolutely just the insane idea of a dude out of his mind on LSD. Like, we could get the fucking dolphins to talk.
How much money do you think they paid the people that were actually working in the fucking, the pools on a daily basis and living there? Like, do you think they got paid well to do that? They have to have, right?
No, not really. I mean, because government funded programs for, research or humanitarian aid or whatever. Like my wife was in AmeriCorps, which is the U.S. based version of the Peace Corps. Like when in the Peace Corps, you go abroad, but the AmeriCorps is you go to different areas within the United States only. And you do different, humanitarian aid or mutual aid tasks. Like my wife was a teacher and taught in some like lower income schools. And she got, and granted, this was back in like 2007 or something like that, but she made $12,000 a year. That was what she was paid for that, which was her whole life and job.
Do you think it's funny because that actually sounds more useful to society than like living with dolphins?
Oh yeah, you think?
Yeah, like objectively that sounds like a better use of one's time. However, do you think that that's equivalent? Like, are you saying that you think they probably got paid, like in the 60s, obviously it would have been like they got paid $500 and you can buy a house with $500. Not literally, obviously, I'm fucking around, but obviously it was not like minimum wage in the 60s, wasn't it like $3 or some shit like that?
Yeah, I don't know what the equivalent like transfer rate of $12,000 a year to like what would be that in the 1960s is off the top of my head. But what I'm saying is like, I think it was probably something where they didn't get paid shit, because it's like these programs, more or less kind of take advantage of the fact that the people who are doing the jobs are like deeply passionate about it, and they wouldn't be doing the job if they weren't the type of person who would do it for free, basically. And they heavily take advantage of that, and they don't pay you anything. Daily life followed a structured routine, designed to maximize exposure between human and dolphin. Mornings were dedicated to language training, where researchers would attempt to teach the dolphin English words and phrases. Afternoons involved behavioral studies, noting how the dolphin responded to different stimuli. Evenings were filled with observations, data collection, and the occasional moments of genuine bonding between species. Over time, that sort of experience has to take on a surreal quality. The Dolphin House became a world unto itself, detached from the rules of ordinary human existence. To NASA, funding this project made a kind of deranged sense. If we were ever to make contact with aliens, we'd need a strategy for understanding and being understood. What better way to prepare than by attempting to bridge the communication gap with another highly intelligent species? Dolphins, after all, had large brains. They were social. They had sophisticated ways of communicating, and as it turns out, they were surprisingly receptive to human interaction, perhaps too receptive. Do you think that this means that Amy Adams' character in Arrival jerked off a dolphin at some point?
Well, at the very least, she's definitely based on someone who has. So it's kind of like a dolphin jerking off cousin once removed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so to research for her role, of course, Amy Adams did, in fact, jerk off a dolphin. The team of researchers led by Lily was small, an untrained yet enthusiastic young woman who simply walked into the project one day and just stayed. She had no scientific background, no degrees, but she had a fascination with dolphins that trumped any credentials. She quickly became the heart of the experiment, the one willing to put in the most time, the one who believed the most fervently in its mission. Here's the thing. I don't know whether this was something where I read like a poorly written article at some point that just didn't get the facts straight, or if it was me just kind of like interpreting something wrong or making assumptions. But the one big thing I didn't know about this story prior to, doing this episode was I knew the story, but I thought that the woman, Margaret Lovett, was a scientist. I didn't know the detail that she was like just a random person that just showed up and was like, I want to do this too. And here's the thing. If I'm like running this Dolphin House And we got people living with dolphins. We're all scientific researchers, and we're dedicated to trying to study if we can teach dolphins, English. And there's all this, funding behind it. And there's this, in theory, sort of like scientific backing for what we're doing. And, it's not all just like fun and games of like, I just want to fucking live with a bunch of dolphins. It's like, oh no, we're trying to do something. And this is like this weird plan that I've concocted. But ultimately, we have a goal. And then a random woman shows up at the door and says, can I live here too? My first thought was, this lady wants to fuck one of these dolphins.
I mean, But I think it's exactly what you're talking about, though, in terms of like taking advantage of people who are there for purely passionate reasons. People who are so driven to be a part of something that they see as greater than themselves, that you're like, well, fuck it. If she's willing to be here and like clean up the dolphin shit, like, yeah, she can hang out. Fuck it, whatever. And then it's like, oh, wow, no, she actually has a greater connection with the dolphins than half of our researchers. Oh, we can actually use her as a tool. Oh my God. Now you're like a month in and she's just like indispensable. I can totally see how that weird moving of the goalpost would happen.
Yeah. In the movie version of this, Margaret Lily would show up and they would apprehensively let her stay after she did something that like proved herself. Like at first they were like, no, of course not. And then like the dolphin like attacked somebody and she just like soothes it and they're just like, this is your room right here. And then there would be like one rival scientist who were just like, you're not even supposed to fucking be here.
Yeah, I fucking studied at Harvard. What have you ever fucking done? I graduated from Encino High. And then she gets into the pool and jerks off a fucking dolphin.
Yes, that's the scene of the movie. But and then at the end of the movie, like she's the one that cracks the code, and a fucking dolphin, recites Shakespeare or something, and then everyone's just clapping, and then that one scientist is just like, "Good job."
Yeah, the movie is called "Come Sail Away with Me." And the last line of the trailer is her being like, I got that dolphin to come sail away with me.
Yes. But yeah, she would be that in the movie. In real life, she just like, they just let a random lady live in this dolphin house with them. In this house, despite how wild it all sounds, is what most people like Margaret are looking for: community and acceptance. We all know joining a cult is a bad idea, that it's manipulation and vile egomania. We hear the warnings and we see it, even turn our noses up to those who fall into the trappings, but they exist because they welcome them. They love and accept you when the world feels cold and terrifying. The Dolphin House wasn't a cult, nowhere near, but it was a community who, despite all logic, said they believed. Lily believed in Margaret. Yeah, here's Margaret Lovett, and I'm assuming she's in the Dolphin House because she's like in water.
Oh, dude, she looks like a nice person.
Yeah, she looks totally normal, totally unassuming. Unlike Jazz Muheen on the Breatharians episode that came out a couple weeks ago, that for the listener was like 2 weeks ago, but for us was like half a year ago. But it's fresh in my mind because I listened to it and edited it. She doesn't really give off any "this person looks like" vibes, because she's just kind of like, she just looks like a warm, nice person.
Yeah, Margaret Lovett looks like the person whose Tinder profile is just a little too extra, and when you meet her in person, she seems really bland, but then she starts telling you stories and you're like, I don't know if I'm comfortable with this.
Yeah. The girl next door who, as it turns out, jerked off a dolphin once. And this is just her older. I think this is from a documentary.
Like I would have no problem dating somebody who like had an OnlyFans account or like had a quote unquote past that might be deemed, culturally a little risque. Jerking off a dolphin, I'd have to think about that one. I think that might be a little intense.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think I would have to think about it. I think if someone told me they jerked off a dolphin, I'd be like, I'm out. I'm tapped out.
Yeah, I don't know if I could get past that. That would be pretty intense. They'd have to be pretty fucking badass of a person. They'd have to be really cool.
So Margaret Lovett had one task above all, to teach a dolphin to speak English. And the dolphin assigned to her was a young male named Peter. Act 2, the experiment. The methodology of the Dolphin House experiment was, by modern scientific standards, absurd. The researchers believed that by immersing the dolphins in an English-speaking environment, by living with them full-time, speaking to them constantly, and engaging them in rigorous lessons, the dolphins might eventually mimic human speech. There is some logic to the idea of language immersion. While not as cartoonishly simple as presented in The 13th Warrior, some studies have shown that listening to speeches or audiobooks in your sleep does help with word recollection. But we're talking about dolphins learning English, the very human language spoken in very human bodies and the organs that hang out within. Dolphins do not have vocal cords, and their method of sound production is completely different from ours. Asking a dolphin to replicate human speech is like asking a human to produce sonar clicks with the precision of a dolphin. And yet, Margaret persisted, convinced that Peter could learn. So that's what they did. Day in and day out, Margaret lived with Peter in the flooded house, her legs constantly submerged, her hair perpetually damp. She would spend hours repeating words to him, exaggerating her mouth movements, coaxing sounds from his blowhole. "Hello, Peter. Come here. 1, 2, 3. Over and over. Slow, deliberate." This is the equivalent of like when you're a kid and you just sit there and you're like sitting at a table or something like that, and you're just looking at like a salt shaker or something on the table or whatever, and then you just sit there and then you just start like trying to will it to like move with like Jedi mind power. And you just sit there and you're just like, maybe it will though. And then you're just like, it might move now. It might move now. It might move now. And you're just like a little kid and you're just like, you sit there for like an hour just doing this because you just, there's something hypnotic about it where you're just like, at any moment, maybe it will finally happen if I just keep doing it. This is that, but if like the government paid for it.
Yeah, it's the you're stopped at a red light in the back seat of your parents' car and you're holding your hand out trying to get the light to change to green psychically, but the government's paying for it.
Yes. The training process was not just monotonous, it was surreal. It was, however, documented, and here we can listen to Margaret describing her and Peter's process before playing actual audio from their session.
And then I would listen while he speaks, and we would set up this conversation type thing where we could make some sort of progress.
Today is January 27th. The time is 0900 hours.
Much of the work in the Dolphin House was captured on tape, and these are the real sound recordings of Margaret's lessons.
A-E-I-O.
But from the start, Peter was a reluctant pupil.
Speak for fish. Don't squirt.
He would listen to me, and I would say, no, Peter, what I want you to do is count to 3. You're going to say 1, 2, 3. And Peter wouldn't repeat everything I told him. He would work on the
1, 2, 3. You can do better, Peter.
Peter, to his credit, tried. Dolphins are natural mimics, and he would adjust his vocalizations in an attempt to match the sounds Margaret made. His whistles and clicks took on a strange, labored quality as he struggled to push air through his blowhole in unnatural ways. Progress was slow, but there was something happening, even if it missed the mark. Being that close, feeling like you were on the cusp of something within your reach, had to be frustrating. But so was something else that was happening too. When you isolate two living beings together for extended periods of time, an undeniable bond forms. And in the case of Margaret Lovett and Peter, the bond became complicated. Margaret had been drawn to the Dolphin House experiment by sheer curiosity and a love of animals, not by any deep scientific ambition. She wasn't a trained biologist or linguist. She was simply a woman who had stumbled upon something extraordinary, a project so strange and full of possibility that it felt like stepping into a science fiction novel. But her relationship with Peter quickly became the defining feature of her involvement. Margaret described their relationship as deeply intimate, though not in the way the public imagines. She loved Peter, not romantically, she insists, but as a companion, a friend. He was her partner in an unprecedented experiment, an animal she came to understand in ways that defied conventional wisdom. And look, that's a natural thing that happens between pet owners and pets. Anyone with that relationship knows kinship forms. A pet can be not just your family or community, but your gateway into more community and more family. You meet others who understand late night walking or scooping up cat litter. They tether you to the ground when the gravity of the world gives way. But Peter was not a pet. He was a dolphin, a young, sexually mature one at that. And as his connection with Margaret deepened, so too did his physical desires. At first, it was an issue of distraction. Dolphins are social creatures, and Peter was an adolescent male with no other males to compete with and only 2 female dolphins who weren't always available to him, and would often display signs of sexual frustration. Erections, rubbing against her, attempts to initiate what in the dolphin world would be considered courtship behavior. It was playful in a way, but also a problem. Peter, eager to interact, would often become aroused in an attempt to engage in sexual behaviors with her, making their linguistic experiments nearly impossible to conduct. Margaret followed protocol, removing Peter from the room and sending him to interact with the female dolphins instead. But this too was disruptive. The interruptions were frequent, and each time Peter was removed, their progress in speech training was derailed. Dolphins have incredibly short attention spans, and by the time Peter was returned, he was often no longer interested in the lesson. It became clear to Margaret that this was a problem she needed to address differently. She took a different approach. Rather than interrupt their studies, Margaret began manually relieving Peter's sexual urges herself. She framed it as a purely practical solution, a way to keep him focused, a simple, clinical act devoid of emotional weight. To her, it was no different than the grooming behaviors animals engage in with their social groups. She insisted there was nothing sexual about it in the way that a human would understand. It was a matter of efficiency, a way to keep the experiment moving forward. But to an outside observer, this element of the relationship is undeniably strange, ethically gray, and just one of the many ways this experiment blurred lines that should have never been blurred. When the details of this practice eventually surfaced, they shocked the public. What had initially become a quirky, obscure chapter in a scientific history suddenly became a scandal. The notion of a woman sexually stimulating a dolphin, no matter how clinical her intentions, was enough to transform the Dolphin House experiment from an unusual research project into something far more controversial. This revelation, more than anything else, is what pushed the story from a footnote in science history into the realm of unsettling legend. We're going to get a little bit more into this as we go on. I mean, I already see you smirking, so you got some things to say. But we're going to get more into this in the story. But, one of the things, when Margaret Lovett talks about this in retrospect, she's very adamant that this was not like a sexual relationship or that she didn't have like romantic feelings for the dolphin. And basically what she's like sort of saying is that in the popular vernacular of, rumors and clickbait articles and things like that, this story is presented as a woman develops a sexual relationship with a dolphin during like an experiment. Like it's presented as like, oh, they were doing this experiment and then like this lady and this dolphin fell in love and then just started like having sex with each other. And she's like, it wasn't like that. I was just doing this because we were trying to do our thing and he was getting frustrated and it was distracting us. And sending him off to do things with the female dolphins just was ruining all of our progress. And so I just did it as a practical way to get over it so that we could move on with the lessons. And honestly, this script is a little charitable to her in that regard and kind of stresses that too. But like a person doesn't just jerk off a dolphin unless there's something else to it. Like nobody's just like, yep, purely clinical. Like I would never jerk off a dolphin. I don't care. Like no scenario I would jerk off a dolphin. I think most people would never jerk off a dolphin. So it's like, okay, it was like a clinical thing. You were just trying to get through the thing, but like you jerked off a dolphin. Like you're not gonna get around that being profoundly strange.
It's kind of mesmerizing though because of her outsider, because of the fact that she's an outsider in this scientific world where she's not a scientist, but she's very dedicated to this scientific mission, right? That's an interesting dichotomy right there. It's interesting that it's a scientific approach to a bizarre concept of trying to teach an animal that does not have vocal cords how to speak or communicate is really interesting. The fact that it's a bunch of fucking weirdos all just like throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what happens, and it turns out what happens is you got to jerk off a dolphin. Like that, all of this is so interesting to me because it to me it feels like passion in search of an end goal. Like it has an end goal in theory of like we're going to teach these dolphins how to speak, but also they literally don't have the capability to do it because they don't have vocal cords. So we're just trying to communicate, and any sort of signal or static that gets in the way of that is deemed as very complex, and like we have to fucking sort this shit out. And I like that her solution is just to go straight through the middle of it and be like, fuck it, I'll jerk off the dolphin. And you know that the other scientists at some point had to learn about this and be like, okay, she's just gonna jerk off she's jerking off Peter.
Yeah, I mean they're in it. Like you don't like live in a house with dolphins for like 6 months or whatever, and then like take a moral stand against somebody jerking off a dolphin for scientific purposes. Like at that point, you're just like, yep, I've been gaslit by my surroundings, and that is normal.
Do you think that like Jane Goodall ever encountered this?
I mean, my assumption is that it would be significantly more dangerous to jerk off a gorilla or even a chimpanzee, considering that like even chimpanzees have like the strength of 10 men. So she probably, just out of personal safety, probably didn't get that close to them. But I don't know. I don't know if, because the thing is, Jane Goodall wasn't like trying to teach them how to talk. I mean, there's obviously the Coco, the gorilla that speaks sign language, but number one, the validity of that has been called into question, and a lot of people say that Coco doesn't actually speak sign language. It's basically a parlor trick where she does a couple of things based on rewards, and they've kind of presented it like she can speak through sign language, but in reality, like gorillas are fundamentally incapable of like communicating with human beings. But even then, it's like, number one, gorillas are a lot more similar to us than dolphins are, just physiologically. And also you can teach a gorilla sign language from like behind a door. Like you don't have to get close enough to a gorilla where like their erections will become like an issue.
This is such a privileged thing to say. We think that the gorilla erections are not a thing. I don't know this. I've never been in this situation. Maybe the gorilla's running at you and you're gonna die. Like, you're framing it like, oh, I don't think she ever jerked off a chimpanzee or a gorilla because they could rip her face off. But what if they were going to rip her face off and the only solution was jerking off a gorilla? I don't know. Maybe that happened. Maybe that's the dark secret that she's been hiding all these years.
So what you're saying is that the objective correct answer to that viral question of who would win in a fight against 100 humans and a gorilla is that it's the humans, because all they would have to do is just jerk the gorilla off?
I mean, it hadn't occurred to me in that way previously, but now I'm kind of leaning towards that, yeah.
And by the way, we have new neighbors that have moved in after, like, between the last time we ever recorded and now. So I've never, other than, a couple of ones that I've done during the day, when they're at work, this is the first time I've been recording an episode that we have these new neighbors, and they're just like, what the fuck?
It can't be any weirder than when we were recording that one time, and there was like one of your neighbors, their kid was in like a cheerleading competition, and they were performing a cheerleading routine to a Coldplay song, and they had a bunch of their little girl friends over at the house. And they were just rehearsing to that same Coldplay song for like 8 hours.
Yeah, Viva La Vida over and over again. Yeah. That was a time. That was like, it wasn't just that day. It was like several weeks where like all day Viva La Vida by Coldplay would just be playing at all times.
Dude, you're living the life, man. You're living the fucking life.
And it's so funny because I'm usually like a pretty logical person and I can like figure things out. But I was totally like, I'm not joking. I swear to God, when that happened, I was like, man, they really love that song. It didn't occur to me that they were practicing a routine, and I was just like, they fucking love Viva La Vida by Coldplay. And then we were having a birthday party for, I think, my oldest son. This was a long time ago, and a friend of ours was over, and he was like, oh yeah, they're like rehearsing for like a dance routine, and I was like, oh. It just never occurred to me.
I kind of love that idea, though. I kind of wish that had just stayed with you, where you just like thought your neighbors were obsessive Coldplay fans.
Yeah, I did for a while. For some reason, there was no sparks went off in my brain to think about that critically. NASA, already on shaky ground with the project, eventually pulled its funding. The scientific results were lackluster. Dolphins, despite their intelligence, were not built to speak English. While Peter had learned to mimic some sounds, it was clear that true language acquisition was impossible. The results were not just underwhelming, they were non-existent. The promise of interspecies communication, so tantalizing in theory, had hit an insurmountable wall in practice. Interspecies love, though, totally doable.
Totally doable.
That's really what they learned. Similar to the sort of the spirit of The Shape of Water. You know, ultimately NASA can say that they spent $1 million or $2 million or whatever it was on learning that a woman can love an animal as only a woman could.
Dude, at least Peter got those handies, man. He got them.
Yeah. I mean, they spent a couple $1 million on just getting a dolphin laid.
I support it.
Which is the premise of like a 1970s college sex comedy.
Yeah, Real Genius 2, the Dolphin House.
So it was money well spent.
Porky's 7, the Dolphin House.
But there was another issue. The credibility of the project had begun to unravel, largely due to John C. Lilly himself. Lilly, once a respected neuroscientist, had become increasingly erratic. He had long been fascinated by consciousness, but his interest had veered sharply into psychedelic experimentation. By the late 1960s, he was less concerned with dolphin linguistics and more interested in the mind-expanding potential of LSD. He began administering the drug to dolphins in hopes that he would elevate their intelligence or somehow unlock their communicative potential. The results were dubious at best, disastrous at worst, and there was no measurable improvement in their ability to mimic human speech. To NASA and the scientific community at large, Lilly's credibility was in free fall. I mean, at that point, like you're like, okay, fine, I understand the premise. You think that we need to figure out how to talk to aliens, and so because dolphins are like a species that we can't communicate with, but they are like very close in intelligence to us. Like, I get it. I get the logic of it. Sure, fine. $2 million. But then in the second iteration, when he's just like injecting dolphins with LSD, at that point they're just like, oh, you just have like a weird dolphin thing. Like this isn't about aliens. You're just like obsessed with dolphins.
I would love to see the footage though of those dolphins high as fuck on LSD. Cause they filmed them on some fucking Zapruder film-esque 16mm bullshit. Like, I would love to see that.
Yeah, somewhere out there's footage of dolphins tripping balls.
That's the real truther bullshit. Like, when you see that footage, it's just a dolphin being like, well, hello, Professor Lilly, how are you? And the government's been hiding that for fucking 50-something years now.
Yeah, he's like, you know what? My bad. I take full responsibility. The Dolphin House, total wash, total waste of money. We built that house, it ended in a disaster. That lady jerked off that dolphin. Bad press. It was all bad. But here's the thing. All I had to do was just inject them with acid. And now they can just speak like the fucking smart gremlin from Gremlins 2. They're out here singing New York, New York. Here's also some more murky water. While we're not here to damn or endorse hallucinogenics, there's no world where it's cool to make a dolphin drop acid in a dilapidated house in the Virgin Islands. That's cyberpunk stuff. Or Roy Scheider's version of a freak-off party. It's actually how he died. Dolphin House was shut down. The flooded rooms were drained, the experiment abandoned. The dolphins, including Peter, were relocated to a different facility. A stark, sterile tank with no human companions, no daily lessons, no Margaret. The environment was profoundly different from the open, interactive space he had come to know. Deprived of his home and his human connection, Peter fell into a deep depression. Dolphins, highly emotional creatures, are known to form deep social bonds, and the abrupt separation from Margaret was devastating. Within weeks, Peter died. By what some believe was an act of suicide. Dolphins, unlike humans, do not breathe involuntarily. Each breath is a conscious decision, and when deeply distressed, they have been known to simply stop breathing. And that's what Peter did. He sank to the bottom of his tank and never surfaced. It was in many ways the final tragic punctuation mark of an experiment that had already crossed so many ethical lines. This, of course, coming from Lily and Margaret. The story that without them, Peter dies of a broken heart is much more catchy than the stress of constant relocation, and the tanking of a creature meant to live in the wild took its inevitable toll. Here's the thing though, like, this is obviously very sad and fucked up that this happened, and I don't want to make light. It's sad that this dolphin fucking died, and not only died, but like killed itself. But also like, this is some emo fuckboy shit. He's like, I can't get any more of them handies. Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort.
'Cause today will be the day that I will drown myself in the bottom of this pool. That's what I'm going to do.
Don't make me change my mind.
Margaret, I fucking need you. It really sucks though, like the fact that, like, you would think there'd be some level of like safety rails. Like, that's one of the things I've been thinking of this whole time, of like, you know, when tests are done on chimpanzees and, you know, animals in various stages of product testing, like, obviously love that. I don't love that we test things on animals. But also there's like legal thresholds that all those things have to go through. And yeah, I think it's pretty cruel that we do it. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that. You can say that now, but like without animal testing, your hair would never stand up like that.
This is au natural, baby.
Oh shit.
I mean it more of like, it's one thing, I guess, maybe if there's a scientific purpose to it that is like curing diseases or something like that. Like when they're injecting like hormones or stem cells into rats that have cancer, that kind of stuff. But it's another thing when it's like we're testing out makeup on chimpanzees and it's like causing them to break out in rashes and they're like freaking out and we're not like, it's just, animal testing is cruel. Like, it just is cruel. There's like checks and balances to that, you know, before it goes to human trials, obviously. And there's also like stages of things, right? Like, we're testing in a lab, then we're testing things on rats, and then we're testing, you know what I mean? Like, and I don't want any living thing to suffer, but I think it's fucking buck wild that they were just like, all right, we're jumping straight to these dolphins, and oh, it's not working. All right, fucking giving them bitches LSD. Nope, that's not working. Okay, well, we're gonna like sexually abuse them, even though it thinks it's giving consent, like it's an animal, so it can't. So now we're just going to shut it down, and it didn't take that well because it's an animal and it doesn't understand what's happening. Oh yeah, that sounds about right. Oh fuck, it drowned itself?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, as cruel and draconian as animal testing is, government animal testing, there you imagine or assume that there's like a lot of checks and balances of it. And, you know, there's all these rules and all this, you know, deep level of red tape and paperwork that you got to fill out to like even talk to an animal. You make the assumption that there's like all these crazy regulations and rules around it, because it's like, that's what it would be, right? Like the government is doing like this project and there's animals, living things involved, and there's like, you know, things being injected with things. Like there's definitely like, you know, fucking waist deep rules and regulations, and you know, people are having to wade through all these things, and anytime you want to make any decision, you have to spend like 3 weeks getting it approved. So to find out that they were just like, here's $3 million, build a water world house and fuck dolphins, baby. What the fuck?
And it makes it even funnier when it's the 60s. So it's like dudes in like pencil ties and white shirts with like high watered black pants and pocket protectors being like, you got the new 16 millimeter dolphin fucking footage. For scientific purposes, I really want to see it.
Yeah, that's the real conspiracy. That's like the conspiracy theorist angle of it, is like this whole thing was so that they could create like dolphin fetish videos.
Yeah, legally sanctioned dolphin fetish.
That's the real thing. That's the reason why they don't want to release the Epstein files, is because if they did, they would see like every politician and celebrity in the world jerking off to dolphin porn.
I mean, look, they all wish they could jerk off a dolphin, but we just don't live in that world anymore. Margaret, the few, the proud, the Margaret.
Yeah. So many people envy Margaret, love it.
Is there a deeper lesson to this episode to you? Like, is there a like beware of snake oil salesmen moral to this? Or is it more just like evidence of the insanity of bureaucracy? Or is it more like, look at the no holds barred, boundless potential for human imagination in weird ass fucking experimental ways?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's kind of two things to it. I mean, one of them is, once again, all of this is really independent or precluded by the fact that it's horrible that what actually ended up happening was this lady was like sexually abusing a dolphin, and then the dolphin killed itself. And this is all, everything I'm about to say is precluded by that. Like, that's all bad and shouldn't have happened. And for that reason and that reason alone, I think this whole thing was not good and should have been shut down much earlier, or at least should have been handled in a way more kind of like official, regulated way.
Nah, man, the second her fingers wrapped around that dolphin penis, shut it down, end it.
But the thing that I've said before, which kind of applies to this, like the dolphin jerking off aside, just the idea in general, the fact that they wanted to try to like teach dolphins how to speak English, and so they built a house where dolphins and humans live together. Like, would I want to live in that house? Absolutely not. That sounds like a nightmare. But the thing I was saying about like how I want them to fund these weird ideas, like there was some truth in that like, I've said it before on the show, I love the fact that like human beings remain ungovernable. Like you can't tame the American spirit, and there's always some fucking weirdo who's doing some fucking weird ass shit, and you can't stop them. Like, you can't stop people from being fucking weird and freaky. And even though I'm personally just not particularly weird or freaky, I love that about humanity. And the fact that you just like can't really beat that out of us with any kind of conditioning. And sure, you can make strides to it, and you can have periods of, you know, mass obedience, and, you know, that ebbs and flows or whatever. But you really can't stop people from being freaks. And I that's the part of it that I love. I love the idea that somebody was like, I want to live in a fucking house of dolphins. The flip side of that, though, is like, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a case of snake oil salesmen, because I think that the government probably didn't think that this guy was really going to do this. I think they were just like throwing money at weird things, you know, thinking that, you know, at some point something, you know, they're just like, we have a vested interest in just like funding a bunch of strange things in case one of them happens to pan out. And I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but I'm sure there have been some really weird projects that have been done that would sound on their face just as absurd as this, that led to some genuine scientific or social breakthroughs that like benefited us in a massive way. I'm sure there are. I don't know any, offhand.
The Frisbee.
You mean when Marty McFly threw that pie tin at Buford Tenon?
No, I mean, literally, the Frisbee was a thing like this. Originally, the Frisbee was designed as like a mortar carrying device where they were going to put mortars and claymores on the bottom of a disc and throw it at the enemy. And then on impact, it would explode. And they spent millions of dollars developing this and then realized the weight of the mortar is too heavy, so we can't really do it. But the disc that they developed to throw that mortar is the Frisbee.
Oh yeah, I didn't know that. But yeah. To a lesser kind of funny or novel degree, like microwaves were originally invented to be for like space. Like they were like, how do we heat food with in a environment where we can't start fires? And so they invented the microwave. And then they were just like, wait a minute, we could sell this to every fucking person in America, and the world eventually. Or like there was a thing in the 70s or maybe 60s where before like heat-seeking missiles were invented, where they created these missiles where they trained birds to recognize ships, and then like they would put them inside of a missile and like strap them in, and there would be like a little viewport in the front of the missile, and the bird was trained to where if it saw a ship, it would peck in that direction on the wall of the missile, and then the pecking would cause the missile to change into that direction. And so they would like just fire a missile in the general direction of an enemy ship, and then the bird would just watch, and then it would like guide the missile to the ship by like pecking on either side of it until it finally like got in the direction of the ship. And they like developed this out, and it was this whole thing where they had these teams of birds, and obviously they were like single use because the missile would crash into the thing and then the bird would be dead. They developed this project, and then they like tested it out, and it worked, but then it never actually became a real thing because of all the impracticalities of it. They never actually really like put it into real combat.
What war was this developed for?
I think it wasn't developed for a war, but let me hold on.
Like, are we talking like Civil War era, or are we talking like World War I? Because I've never heard of that, and that is fucking insane.
Project Pigeon. It was during World War II.
Wow, that's crazy.
There were pigeons. They weren't just birds. They were pigeons specifically.
Wow, I've never heard of that before.
Developed by B.F. Skinner. They trained pigeons to recognize ships and guide missiles toward them. And they tested it out a couple times, and it worked basically. And then the project died because it was just so impractical, and they would just have to constantly be training new birds.
Man, that's crazy. What the fuck?
But I don't know if there's like a, be careful who you trust or whatever. I don't think that there was like really much trust that went into it exactly. I think they were just giving money to people that they thought were actually crazy in case they did figure something out. So yeah, I don't know what the lesson is to take away from this other than, number one, don't jerk off dolphins. I find the idea that lady's actions were like innocent and just based off of a clinical need to like finish a experiment. I think that, when you get to the point where you're jerking off dolphins, there's something more to it than just, I want to get through this so we can continue our lesson. I don't think, it's a normal thing for somebody to resort to dolphin hand jobs. Like there's some other thing to it.
She's like super dedicated, swimming with these dolphins, really, she's in it to win it, dedicated to it 110%, and then just happens to be like, it was the best thing for science. It was just the best thing for science for me to jerk off the dolphin, that's all.
Yeah, I showed up to this house out of nowhere and just as a regular person and just begged them to let me live with them despite having no scientific or, research training at all. Just because I love dolphins so much. And then, at one point I did jerk off a dolphin, but like it was purely clinical. It had nothing to do with my personal feelings at all.
Yeah. And Margaret, if you're listening to this and you want to come on the show and defend
yourself,
we're open to it. We had the flat Earth guy. We can have the dolphin jerk off woman. That's fine.
Hopefully you're as into media as he was.
Oh, he's a huge media guy. Yeah. Such a huge media guy.
I love media.
Yeah, he just loves media. Well, which is kind of a novelty for us, because usually I feel like there is some sort of deeper point, and I feel like we've touched on all of them already.
Yeah, and in this case, I think the reason why there isn't like a really big takeaway is because I just, in my mind, like the thing that you want to go towards is like, oh, you know, like what you were saying, like what, you know, something about a snake oil salesman or whatever. But ultimately, I just don't think that factors in, because I think that NASA probably realized this guy was fucking crazy, and it was the 60s and they were just like, fuck it. So it's just like, yeah, they did crazy shit. They were funding weird shit. We know that. There are several other projects that they also funded that were kind of equally as crazy. They probably do less so of that now, but also probably actually still do some of it now. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's probably basically a bad thing. But I don't fucking know. Maybe some of them pan out and have like real results. I have no fucking clue. But you know, it's really out of our purview because the government is so opaque that we really have no control over what they're actually doing. So it's just kind of like almost pointless to speculate. And so all I'm left with is don't jerk off dolphins.
And on that note, I'm Dave Baker.
And I'm Andrew Price.
This has been Deep Cuts. If you'd like to find me, you can do so on the internet at heydavebaker.com or on the socials at xdavebakerx. Also, maybe you could pick up my book, Mary Tyler Moorhawk. It's available wherever graphic novels are sold. It's pretty cool. Top Shelf put it out. It's pretty nice. Andrew, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me in my remote island Dolphin House, just getting down and dirty with some D's. D stands for dolphins. No, wait, I'm not the guy who has the weird bestiality joke. That's not me. But you can also get my book, Deadbolt AI Private Eye, which is not about dolphin bestiality. It's about a robot detective in the future solving crimes, by going to my website, dapricewrites.com. You can follow us on social media by going to Facebook and searching Deep Cuts Podcast. You can join our Facebook group, which is called the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group, where we talk about the show. We make memes. There's a cool little community there that talks about stuff and hangs out. You can also join our Discord server, bit.ly.com/DeepCutsDiscord, where we have another group of people who hang out, talk about stuff, play games, discuss episodes, so on and so forth. It's a fun little community. You can follow us on Instagram at Deep Cuts Pod. You can follow us on TikTok at Mystery Treehouse. You can go to our website and pick up some merch, deepcutspod.com. Click on the shop. We got hats. We got baby onesies. We got fanny packs. We got coffee mugs, anything you could think of with Deep Cuts graphics on them. And you can follow me on TikTok at Treehouse Detective, or you can subscribe to my Substack, which is Up in the Treehouse. Deep Cuts is a production by Boy Genius Media. If you'd like to find this show and others like it, please visit boygeniusmedia.com or deepcutspod.com.
If you want to join in on post-episode discussions, please join the Deep Cuts Podcast Facebook group. Finally, subscribe to our YouTube channel for additional video content.
The incidental music for this episode was created by D. Catalano, whose music can be found at wekeepoddhours.bandcamp.com. This episode of Deep Cuts was written by Adam Smith. The episode was edited by Andrew Price. If you'd be interested in writing for Deep Cuts, email andrew@boygeniusmedia.com.